So Trump has officially started a trade war with everybody. And that's the situation that we're in. And now some of the people who supported him, who voted for him, the person you're seeing on screen here is Dave Portnoy, who is a sports podcaster, but then also has waded into politics. And he, during a stream, some content of some kind, announced that his portfolio has lost $7 million because of Trump's stock market crash sparked by these tariff announcements. I'll then show you somebody who laid out, just posted a thing of text saying, here's why I regret voting for Trump, and then a bunch of other things, including Republican Senator John Kennedy being aggravating as ever. Click the subscribe button. Let's get into it. A lot to discuss. I hope you're doing well despite everything. Here is Dave Portnoy, who's not doing well.
Trump has put his tariffs all over the place, get some wacky formula, new tariffs. And everything's in the shitter because of it. I'm down $7 million.
And then, of course, the criminally loud outro music there from TikTok. And Dave Portnoy, he is a MAGA guy, but, you know, here and there he'll criticize. And unlike whenever we'll cover these stories of people losing millions of dollars because they invested in Trump's crypto or something, and it's a little bit more, oh, that's your problem. This is all of our problems, because the reason he lost, that means he has tons of money in investments to have lost $7 million. But it's a representative or a representation of the fact that everyone's retirement investments are seeing a huge blow. And this is, you know, even more consequentially, a potential, I'd say, inevitable sign of what is to come. Richard Hanania posted, for those asking, yes, voting for Trump was a mistake. I thought we'd get a repeat of the first administration, but we didn't. The signs were there. I just did not take my own ideas about the awfulness of Trump and MAGA seriously enough. When I said I would vote Trump in 2024, I was clear-eyed about the human capital problem on the right. I just thought that the basic ideological basis of conservatism, free markets, individual rights, tough on crime, and foreign adversaries was sound, and enough of it was left over to make even a Republican president this personally flawed a better option. Yet I was expecting something of a repeat of the first administration, with Trump restrained by traditional conservative ideas, personnel, and institutions. As it turned out, the old Reagan coalition was becoming increasingly hollow, replaced by Trump worship, online edgelordism, and late arriving scammers like Crypto Bros and Maha. The signs were there, and I talked extensively about how Trump was becoming something of a cult leader with few checks on his whims and desires, but I must have thought that maybe Jared Kushner would just wait until he fell asleep around noon and then start making all the right calls, or that it would be Elon. But that Elon was a smart guy with libertarian views instead of someone whose brain had been completely melted by right-wing internet slop and ketamine. The problem in the end, though, wasn't just Trump as an individual, even though he is quite awful, but the entire idea of anti-establishment politics. We now have a great deal of empirical evidence showing that populism simply does not work, whether it's in its right or left-wing form. So I always want to say, because some people just go, you're so upsetting. Why did you make that mistake? I'm going to say thank you for saying that publicly, Richard. I do think it's important that people acknowledge it when they come to that acknowledgement privately to put it out publicly. And I think it's fair. I think Richard would think it's fair for us to also deal with our emotions as people who beg, tears pouring down our faces, sometimes literally, for you not to believe this was the Republican Party of the past, and that Trump was going to be restrained, and that he specifically was laying out a plan to be unrestrained, to make sure the people who reeled him in last time aren't going to be there anymore. And we said, please, 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 please believe us. And a lot of people said no. I think Richard said no. And it's heartbreaking that people are realizing too late for this damage, not too late to prevent future damage if we can. Now, Republican Senator John Kennedy weighed in on this, and he kind of had a mixed take. This is before his most recent take. In case we have a lot of new viewers every day, hello, welcome. But sometimes it's sort of, who is this character? This is who John Kennedy is. He loves to do this little performance where he's a folksy guy.
Joe flip-flopped like a banked catfish. And I understand that, but I mean, he was under a lot of pressure. I'm not saying it's an excuse, I think he hung in as long as he could. But the truth of the matter is that two salient points. To the American people and the people of Louisiana, I'd say you're not going to find lower gasoline and lower food prices. The only place you're going to find that is in the voting booth, and the creek's not the water's not going to clear up until you get the pigs out of the creek. Go vote.
Pigs not going to do until the creek goes up the stream. Is sort of, that's his vibe, right? All right, so that was back during the Biden administration. Now you know him. No relation to the Kennedys that you're aware of. And that name, similar to the way that RFK represents it, is a bummer. And here he is telling some Fox host that tariffs are like whiskey. See, tariffs are like whiskey. You can't do too much.
We're in uncharted waters. Tariffs are more art, in my opinion, than science.
I really wish we didn't have a no swearing policy right now. What the does that mean? Tariffs, they're more art than science. No, they're not. Art? What?
In my opinion, than science. Tariffs are like whiskey. A little whiskey under the right circumstances can be refreshing. Too much whiskey under the wrong circumstances, and you end up drunk as a goat.
You know, Dave, too much whiskey under the wrong circumstances, and you can end up drunk like a skunk or drunk like a goat, because goats get drunk. And it's funny that we're bringing up tariffs and goats because it reminds me of a memory. Allow me, Dave, if you would. This will help to fill you in on tariffs. Back in college, I made a lot of questionable decisions. But one night, one legendary night, whiskey-fueled night, that was the pinnacle. It started with a bottle of Jameson and ended with me handcuffed, naked, and being applauded by a drunk group of frat boys. As I was some sort of Greek hero. Let me fill you in on this. It was a Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, we called it. Which meant the rules did not apply. I just finished a midterm I definitely didn't study for. In a celebration, I decided to reward my intellectual mediocrity with a generous pour, tumbler filled to the brim with a whiskey. One glass turned to two, you know how it is. Then four. Then someone thought it would be fun to play a drinking game called Drunk History But Personal. The premise, tell the most humiliating story from your past while chugging. I'm getting to the point. I won the game by blacking out mid-sentence. It's now 11 p.m. I decided it would be a brilliant idea to streak across campus. But not just any streak. I stripped completely naked except for a single sock on my hand and declared myself the ghost of finals past. I ran through the library screaming about overdue papers and the downfall of Western civilization. A group of students clapped. One person gave me a Red Bull. I thanked them by performing a dramatic interpretive dance about student debt. College, 12:30 a.m. We're getting to tariffs. 1 second. Somehow, I ended up in the back of a pickup truck with 3 dudes from the wrestling team and a goat named Steve. Later found out that Steve was a part of a fraternity prank, not someone's emotional support animal, like I claimed to the police. We drove to Taco Bell. I tried to pay for 40 tacos with a Blockbuster card and a button I swore was worth at least $5. Now we get to 1:15 a.m. I started preaching to a group of freshmen about how whiskey is just time travel juice and that socks are government propaganda. At some point, I put a traffic cone on my head and insisted everyone call me Mayor Cone. Someone took a photo. It went viral in our school subreddit. They call it subreddit with the caption, "Our leader, our hero, our naked disaster." Now we're at 2 a.m. This is about whiskey. This is about tariffs. Enter the police. They showed up not because of the nudity, but because I had climbed onto the statue of our school's founder and was trying to reenact the Lion King. I was holding the goat. Steve did not cooperate. The officers were surprisingly polite because I looked like a drunken interpretive art piece as they cuffed me. I asked if I could keep the traffic cone. I claimed it was my source of wisdom. They said no, but promised to return it if I got my life together. I woke up in a holding cell, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket next to a guy who only spoke in rhyming couplets and smelled like Axe body spray and regret. The officer brought me a cup of water and said, "You're lucky. We've seen worse, but not much worse." The video of me screaming, "I am the mayor of time" from atop the goat got 2.3 million views. I became a meme. They called me a meme. I still don't know what that means. My nickname on campus was Cone Daddy for the rest of the year. So I'm sure by now you see my point. Tariffs are like art, see? And tariffs are like whiskey. Can be great, but you do too much and you end up being a naked meme. Dave, you still with me? I think they cut the feed. Very folksy, John. Okay, let me show you this whole clip. I got distracted. Here's John's defense of Trump.
We're in uncharted waters. Tariffs are more art, in my opinion, than science. Tariffs are like whiskey. A little whiskey under the right circumstances can be refreshing. Too much whiskey under the wrong circumstances, and you end up drunk as a goat. We just don't know right now.
With one sock on your hand.
But we'll know within the next 6 months. If it works, let's take a dozen. If it doesn't work, the president's going to have to recalibrate.
Recalibrate. Oh, John, the folksiness, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work no more, John. Because we're pissed, all right? We're pissed. No matter how folksy you are, it's pissing us off. It's interesting because it works, Jaden, whenever it's sort of something not of much consequence. Oh, it's cute. It's silly. But that whole shtick he does, telling college stories about catfishes, whatever, it doesn't work when we're actually concerned about the fate of our economy. And we're seeing headlines like this. Wall Street Journal, JP Morgan raises recession risk to 60%. I don't care about your cutesy whiskey anecdotes, real or fictionalized by me, whenever this is happening. A global recession is more likely to happen than not this year, thanks to Wednesday's tariff broadside from the U.S. That's the opinion of JP Morgan analysts who raised their forecast to 60% Thursday. That's up from 40% before President Trump's Wednesday afternoon announcement sent markets tumbling. The administration's plans will likely amount to a 20% point increase in U.S. tariff rates, the firm said. Now, that's a really interesting number, 20%. 20%. Is that too much whiskey for you, John? Or is that still the right amount? Sorry, I don't know why it's because it's a shtick. It's a shtick, which is annoying because he thinks he can sort of play that character out of being serious is why it's bothering me so much. But there's tweets for everything. You look at a MAGA account that said, no one other than fairly stupid partisans, this is back November 9th, right after the election, no one other than stupid partisans on the left thinks Trump is truly going to implement 20% tariffs on everything across the board. And then it has a community note saying, well, sort of he did, though, also. Well, in addition to your point, you're wrong, also. So, well, that's what I've been saying. The post we saw from the Richard guy, maybe Dave Portnoy, I don't know if he's fully regretful yet. Others, it's always been that you have the diehards for Trump, who Trump could literally chop their leg off, and they would say, I didn't like that leg anyways, that was my bad leg. And Trump can do anything. And then you have, so we don't even need to worry, we're not gonna win those people over. But then you have all the other people, because Trump doesn't have 70 plus million supporters. He has his, 40, 30. And then the rest of the people, for one reason or another, get convinced that despite their eyes telling them and their ears informing them that there's some very concerning elements of Trump, that they've been convinced don't believe the worst of what you hear about him. Which, given that politics, by the way, I'm noticing right now, there's a hammer. I don't know where this came from, but there's a hammer on my desk. We're still putting together the studio, so I guess this is not a real hammer, though. We're not hammering nails into it. All sorts of little things, too. It's very exciting in the middle of a move trying to do a show. But I have a story for you. Too many Republicans did not believe that Trump was going to do what he said he was going to do. Do you believe me now? I look smarter now. Those are producer calls. So they were convinced to believe that because of our partisan times, yes, people speak in hyperbole a lot, and that confuses people. But the stuff that was being said about Trump, not all of it, I'm sure some random people, but by me, okay, that's all I can hold accountable. Me, I was saying what ended up being maybe not hyperbolic enough. I'm actually regretting a little bit of my coverage. I don't know if it was hyperbolic enough going into the election, but it sure wasn't too hyperbolic. And you had so many people, because I've appeared on the show, sort of he'll pop in my mind frequently, Piers Morgan, who says, I'm not right or left, I'm just a journalist. And you look to someone, audiences will look to someone like him and go, well, if Piers Morgan, who's not a crazy MAGA person, if he's saying that Trump's going to be totally fine, it's going to be fine. Look, it's so cute. He was in a dump truck with his dump shirt. Because Dumpy likes dumping. The dump truck scene, you remember how obsessed in the McDonald's scene, Piers Morgan was like, oh my gosh, Trump, he cooked fries at a McDonald's. He's everyone's everyman. That convinces people. It misled people. And now they're seeing, oh, this wasn't. People weren't being hyperbolic when they were saying he literally is going to wage an assault on democracy. He's literally going to tank the economy. And Trump's now breaking records, but not the good ones, with this stock market performance.
S&P 500 drops of 5% or more at this point in a presidency. There are only two of them, right? There's Donald Trump, a 10% drop since he took office. The only one that matches it or exceeds it was George W. Bush back in 2001, a drop of 18%. This is it. This is the whole kit and caboodle since the S&P 500 was created as an index back in 1957. When you're one of two and we're talking about drops in the stock market, All
right. Well, what makes this presidential plunge different than all other presidential plunges, except for the fact that we reclined at this plunge?
Exactly right. We're right on the eve of Passover, so why not go with that? Again, we're going to look at these drops of 5% plus. What is so different about this versus the Bush plunge? Remember, it was the dot-com bubble, right? That was happening before George W. Bush took office. What did Donald Trump inherit? He inherited a bull market from Joe Biden. Donald Trump is the only one to take a bull market and turn it into a bear market to such a degree that we're having a drop of 5% or more at this point. This is historically unprecedented. What Donald Trump, one man, it seems to me, has done to perhaps my favorite stock market index.
So, Trump told us we were going to be tired of winning. So this is winning in MAGA speak. Adam Kinzinger posted, this is the beginning of a massive fall of MAGA. No amount of division, fear-mongering, lies, and cheap lines will overcome the fact that you just took many people's prosperity just because it makes you feel powerful. Mark my words, the beginning of the end. And what is honestly, it's understandable, but it is tragic, is that a lot of people won't care about the dangers of a politician until it hits their wallet, right? So we try to convince people based off of the democracy dedication I wish we all had. We try to convince people based off of the forecast of the economy. But the nuts and bolts of those things, again, people are living busy lives, and a lot of people won't hear those things until they feel them, and that's what's going to happen. But remember, it's not like no one was warning us. Someone was. Someone was. Have you ever heard of her?
What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you.
Yeah, I mean, there it was. We didn't listen. Share your thoughts in the comments.